Ahoy there! Not you, no. These watches, Ahoy's there, Ahoy's here. These are the latest Ahoi watches from Nomos, which is a brand that it still charms me. And I think one of the reasons I still like Nomos watches and Nomos as a brand is because it seems to know how to evolve and how to iterate without losing its principles, its design principles. A lot of brands will just throw hundreds of designs into the market and see what works. Watchmakers across the entire spectrum do that, but not many of them have such an identifiable aesthetic. And Nomos would probably sell more watches if it came out with an integrated bracelet steel sports watch, or a traditional looking dive watch with a timing bezel, but it hasn't. In fact, these right here, these are the Nomos dive watches. 10 years ago, Nomos released the first Ahoi watches. It was its first watch with more than 100 meters of water resistance, first watch with crown guards, maybe even its first watch on textile straps and not leather. There are 40.5mm versions of the Ahoi, there are 36.5 versions, and now finally there's a 38.5mm reference. Two of them, a new size and two new colors, Sky and Sand, and you'll just have to guess which is which. 38.5mm across, 10mm thick about, and 48mm long. They have 200 meters of water resistance, 20mm drilled lugs, and they come on really nice textile straps. With a solid steel case back, the watches cost $4,320, and for a sapphire display back, they cost $4,660. $340 for the sapphire case back, that's kinda tough for me. I know the material is more expensive and it's probably harder to seal against water, but that's about twice the price that I'd expect. But one nice touch with Nomos watches is that Nomos will engrave the watch for you for free, even around the sapphire of the case back. But you can fit more text on the solid case back, which, could be useful, just saying. Both watches use the in-house DUW 6101 movement. It's a very pretty looking movement. Nomos has always done a nice job with finishing for the price. But at this price, I'd expect a little more than 42 hours of power reserve, which is what this has. It does do something cool and uncommon though. You can adjust the date forward and backward. I'm told that for some reason this is technically difficult to do. I suspect it has something to do with gears, maybe springs, and perhaps something called a cam, which is like a gear but probably maybe not. And this has been your Terrific's Watchmaking Corner, your source for answering the question, how'd that watch do? I really like the date windows on the Ahoi watches. You might think that a large date window like this, not just large, but on the edge of the dial, you might think that it might look out of place, but I think it looks really nice. The date is very legible and it's large enough that I think it balances well against the 9 o'clock marker. And that's helped a lot by the fact that the date disc, the background color of the date, is the same color and the same finish as the dial. Another nice touch with setting the watch is that the crown has a red ring that you can see when the crown isn't screwed down. The red says, "Hey, wet boy, don't go in the water, stop." It's another uncommon feature that really should be on more watches. It can't be that hard to design and build. On my wrist, on my 7-inch wrist, the 38.5 Ahoi is great. I could wear the 40.5mm reference and I could wear the 36.5mm reference. I'm not afraid of large watches or small watches like many people viewing this video, but I do think that this is the Goldilocks Ahoi for my hand stem, which is another name for my wrist. Just like with several Nomos watches, the thing that's going to be an issue for smaller wrists is the lug length and design. These watches are 48mm long, really not that long for 40 or 41mm watches, but for a 38.5mm watch, it's kind of unusual, but not unheard of. I think if your wrist is under 17 centimeters, try the 36.5mm Ahoi. That's probably the size for you, and it won't look small. Nomos watches have huge dials because they have the thinnest bezels, and sometimes that can make a watch look a bit larger. I tried and loved the 35mm Tangente. I think the proportions and size look good on my wrist, but a 35mm traditional dive watch, I probably wouldn't go for that. The design of a watch affects the wearability as much as the diameter of the case, maybe even more. I don't think enough people realize that. Then again, this is supposed to be a sports watch in its own Nomosian way, so maybe bigger is better. But is it a sports watch? It's been marketed at times as a dive watch, but it doesn't have a timing bezel and it doesn't even have a central seconds hand, so it'd be tough to time a dive. Maybe that's because you don't need to. You're not diving, and if you are diving, you should be using a dive computer, not a mechanical watch, you freak. You're gonna get us all killed. So to me, this is kind of an honest sports watch. It has 20 meters of water resistance, it has crown guards, water resistant strap, but it looks kinda dressy. Now look at something like, I don't know, like the Royal Oak that's been positioned as a sports watch for 50 years. Only 50 meters of water resistance, no crown guards. It's delicate, with a list price of $35,000. It's stupid. Not the watch, but calling something like this a sports watch. The Ahoi, even if it doesn't look like what most people think of as a sports watch, it feels more honest to me. It's a very capable daily watch. It's a gotta watch, a go anywhere, do anything watch. When I think about the competition for the Ahoi, there's a lot of stuff between $3,500 and $5,000. If I add the requirements for 200 meters of water resistance or more, loom, and if you care, you can throw in in-house movements too, if that matters to you, which it really should not. What's interesting is that on paper, the Ahoi has competition from Tudor, Omega, Breitling, but when you look at the watches, the Ahoi is really nothing like those other pieces, which is cool. Even if it's not your idea of a sports watch, I think it's worth appreciating a brand that can build something which technically competes with those other watches, those real dive watches, I guess, without compromising style. It's like playing basketball in raw selvage denim jeans. I tried it. Sure, I looked great, but things got really weird. Unlike me, I think Nomos has been able to pull off sports with style. Its own style.